Hi, welcome to Changemakers, a smarter school podcast exploring how to live a successful and happy life. I am Motlatso, your host. On every episode, I talk to great thinkers and doers from different walks of life who are at the forefront of positively impacting society. Our conversations focus on their specific journeys to achieving their goals. We talk mindsets, books, advice, and tools they use to keep them motivated. All the key ingredients you need for a happy and fulfilling life. I hope you enjoy this next episode. Let's go. Hi, Motlatso. How are you?
Hi, Katleho. I'm good. And yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for giving us your time. I know that you are a very busy individual, so we really appreciate you giving us time on this platform today.
Sure. I'm really happy to sit down with you and just have a conversation.
Yeah. So I want our conversation today, to center around um, you, as personal as possible, um, with the theme about you being a researcher, and now studying towards your philosophical doctorate in demography and population studies. Could you maybe just take us through that? What are demographic and population studies? What do people who study that do?
Cool. So I am studying demography and population studies. I started studying demography and population studies from I think from honors. So all of my postgrad is in demography and population studies, and basically what it is understanding population dynamics. So think about migration, basically why people come into a country and why do people leave. Think about mortality. What causes people to die? What are the percentages of people dying in a specific context? Also think about maybe also fertility. So the birth rate that occurs in different settings. So for example, currently in South Africa, on average, women are having at least 3 children, right? So understanding that type of statistics in terms of what is happening in the population is basically the fundamental of demography and population studies. Recently, that has extended to also understanding other, I guess, elements of the populations, which include health. So this basically aims to understand different health issues. It could be HIV, it could be chronic or non-communicable diseases, and basically understanding number one, their burden or the prevalence of these conditions in a population. And what I really like and why I pursued a career or my studies in demography is that we're not only concerned with understanding or documenting the prevalences, so giving numbers, like, okay, there's 20% of people living in HIV in South Africa. But an important part of our work is also helping people understand why. Why is there 20% of adults diagnosed with HIV in South Africa? Why is it that like a lot of people are migrating out of the country at a specific point in time? Why is it that women are preferring now to have at least 3 children as compared to the past where they prefer to have more children? So we not only, provide, quantitative analysis or quantitative data, but, part of our work is also to provide, an understanding of these numbers. And basically that's demography.
Wow, I was not expecting such a comprehensive response, but I can tell that you are very passionate about what you do. And before
Yeah.
I zoom in, into what exactly in demography, because I mean, when you're responding, you're explaining that it could take different, you know, um, specialities, for a lack of a better word,
Yeah.
that you can focus your numbers and explaining why those numbers exist in different fields or
Yeah.
industries. So before I get into what numbers are you specifically focusing on when you are pursuing your PhD, I always get fascinated when I hear of, career paths that at my age and even having been to university, I did not know that they exist.
Yeah.
So how do people find, even yourself, people like yourself find yourselves doing things like demography and population studies? How did you get into it? Where did you hear about it?
So in my first year at Wits, I registered for a BSc. I did it for, I think, a year or two, and then it was just something
What's a
that I didn't
BSc?
enjoy.
Just for for our listeners and viewers.
Oh, a
What's a
Bachelor of
BSc?
Science.
Okay.
I did a Bachelor of Science, general, when I started at Wits. So it had courses like calculus, statistics, but another good thing that I added was psychology. And I just randomly added it because it was one of those things that Barry add a subject, add another course, so I was like, let me take psychology because I was doing a BSc general. So
Mhm.
a good thing, I guess, and it was kind of like a blessing in disguise from my start. I had a feel of both numbers and a little bit of social science in psychology.
Mhm.
So at the point where I figured that, ish, these numbers, I wasn't really enjoying it, and me not enjoying it could be two ways. Me not performing as well as I wanted to, or it could have a reverse effect, because I was
Yeah.
not enjoying it, I was not performing as well as I wanted to. So I
True.
decided at the end of, I think it was my first year, and I didn't fail the year. I just got really poor marks. Like I was like a 50% student. And I just realized, okay, basically, where am I gonna go with, my 50%?
Yeah.
What was my
But most
plan?
most people would have
So
been
yeah, so
very happy that it's a pass, especially at Wits.
what?
I'm saying that 50%, most people would have been happy that, at least it's a pass, especially at
Yeah,
Wits.
no,
But you were like, no,
it didn't
man,
make me
where am I going with the 50?
happy. Yeah, it
Yeah.
didn't make me happy at all. And because I mean,
Mm.
my friends at varsity, were most of them, they were doing Bachelor of Science, like, and they were like doing either calculus, actuary, and they were really, really doing great. Like I'll go to the notice board with some of my friends, and when we get there, they're like, yeah, and I'm like, So I really had the opportunity to like self-examine myself. For okay, when I was at time when you go to a notice board, what's wrong with you? So I wasn't
Yeah.
doing really great, and so at the end of the year, I went to the CCDU. I think it was CCDU. Basically, it's like a career counseling unit thing that we have at Wits. And I
Mhm.
just asked to see, I think nearly a career counselor or something like that. And then I explained to her, like, listen, I'm not performing as well as I want to. And then she sat down with me and asked me, like, which subjects aren't you performing like great in? And then she asked me, so in psychology, how do you feel about it? I was like, still the same. Like, with everything, I was not performing as great. And she said
Yeah.
to me, because most of basically my course plan was really maths focused. So I had calculus and I had statistics and I had Yobo. So I maybe try something different, like totally new, different. And that's basically how I came to apply for a Bachelor of Arts.
Yeah.
So I deregistered my BSc, and I took a Bachelor in Arts in International Relations. And then I was just like a flying A student. I was like, "Ooh, I'm living the life." Like I could literally
Yeah.
also now
Cruising.
be happy when I go to the notice board. Um, but I think at the end of and so I got an undergraduate degree in international relations and politics. Those were my majors. Um, but two things also were important to me at that point in time. And the first one was, what am I going to do with a degree in politics and international relations in South Africa, where we
Mhm.
know that, unemployment is high among graduates, and
Yeah.
really you need to have a degree where you are most likely to find employment. And this is what I encourage everybody to do. Find it was easy sailing afterwards in varsity once I registered for a BA, but an important thing at that point once I got my degree was, and then what, and a second thing that I reflected on was, I wanted to get a feel of both. So I wanted to be somewhat, proficient in doing maths and being like a quantitative person. But I also now realized that I was actually good in the social sciences. So I needed to
Yeah.
find something moving forward that could blend the two together, and help me to establish a career, I guess. And so, yeah, and I just started reading and looking around in terms of what could I do for my postgrad that could help me understand and, be somewhat a quantitative person, but also leverage on the social sciences. And that's how I found demography and population studies. And yeah, I basically came across it in a pamphlet here at Vids, and I read about it, and I read it exactly like what I had explained earlier, and I registered for it for my postgrad, and yeah, that's how I
And
found
here
myself
you
in
are,
it.
flying and happy. I mean, listening to you respond to that, I can hear that, I think many people think sometimes people who are successful as you are, I mean, you went to be honored with the Mail and Guardian, a youth award. I think it was in 2018 when I looked at your profile. And you have a scholarship now for your PhD, and you also an executive member of the convocation committee at VERTS. So you are a very successful, a young individual still. I think many people think, people like yourself, get there without any, you know, um, what can I,
Like hurdles.
challenges, and
Yeah.
it seemed like your life has worked out and you planned and calculated everything, but it does seem like, there were a lot of harms, you know,
Yeah.
in your road, but somehow you managed to find, what works for you, and I think that's a very, an interesting way of looking at, success, that it's not always calculated, and it does not
Yeah.
always work out the way you think it would, but you have to be open and try to decide who you are, and also, it's a process. It's not an
Yeah.
event, it's something that changes over time. So that's just what
I
I
I
got
did.
when I heard you say that.
Yeah, so because actually I'm talking to an economics person, I did like part of my BSc also because it was general. Basically, it's just a basket of everything. Although you're registered
Mhm.
for a Bachelor of Science, so I had economics also, and I never in my life passed that subject. Like I did not. Like I used to get 40s and 30s, and this is like term mark. So,
Yeah.
and that's when I also began to realize that, there are things that I'm good in and things that are basically just not my niche area. And it was a painful experience because at that time, um, it's only now when I'm self-reflecting, but okay, no, basically there were things that you were good in and some things you weren't good in. But at that time, it was painful and hurtful because, like I said, I went to notice board with my friends that, were doing really, really well in these subjects. And at that time, I hadn't found what I wanted to do and things that I'm actually good in. So yeah, it's
Well,
life.
I'm very glad that you found your niche, and you are happy, doing what you're doing today. I want to, now go in more into what you are working on. I know that you are part of, what I picked out to be a very important thing, especially, in the context of our country, knowing that, we are the HIV prevalence, using the scientific word, or the number of people living with HIV,
Yeah.
in our country is the highest, right? Or is it the number of people? Okay, you will explain that as a demographer, but like we are
Yeah.
like in the top, right?
Yeah.
Where HIV is a very, it's one of the, very important health issues. And you worked on a study, looking at preventing HIV, for, amongst, young girls and women, using, what's called a vaginal ring. So I just want you to tell us more about, that project and what it's about and what you did as a demographer. What were the outcomes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you remembered that project. So we did that project as part of one of the very first jobs that I had, no, second job that I had. That's where we did that project, and it was a project to basically, I think it was the international microbiocides
Yeah.
something. They were based, so they had developed a vaginal ring, an HIV vaginal ring that uses dapivirine. So it's basically it releases, I guess, microbiocides, which are basically a form of not a form of ARV, but it basically is a way of preventing women from contracting or from getting HIV. And what they do is that they insert this vaginal ring, and then it basically just releases. Let me just call them ARVs for the sake of simple
Yeah. Sure.
communication. Basically
Or
releases
prep. What's prep again?
yes, it basically
Yeah.
releases exactly that,
Yeah.
and helps women to prevent HIV. And what was really, really cool about it, and just about the study in general, was that in many societies that we live in, the power dynamics between men and women still exists, and it becomes quite difficult for women, for example, to negotiate, safer sex practices, or to even ask men, to consider safer sexual practices like using a condom, etc., etc. So with them now being able to have this ring that they could, insert within themselves, they don't even have to tell, their partners. It's just there. They got the protection of preventing themselves from HIV. My role, and I think our role on the study, that we were contracted to basically go out and speak to these women that were, and not these women, but women in general, who are likely to make use of the ring, and get them involved in naming the ring. So they were in some communities, for example, it might be a bit difficult for them to, get to a hospital and say, I just want kupa vaginal ring. It's just not
Yeah.
something that it's easier to say. Or even if there was a name to it, we wanted a name that was, I guess, that was not discreet in a way, but that really was relatable to the woman, and would make them more interested or more keen to use this vaginal ring. So that project was just basically going out, speaking with these women, and getting them involved in naming this ring. It occurred prior to the ring being distributed or made access to everyone. So the company that I was working for, Genesis, was contracted by the organization that created the ring to see if we could basically help them name the ring. Yeah. So it was a really cool project. Yeah.
Cool. So the ring, it was never, that intervention was not implemented. People are not
No,
using
no,
the
no.
ring now.
And so the findings of the study was actually really helpful. So we basically, the interviews were qualitative. So we, went out. I think we did interviews in South Africa, and there were other countries, I think Uganda, Zimbabwe, where we spoke to different types of women in different contexts. And then we analyzed the findings, and the recommendations that we provided actually informed what the ring ended up being named. And I think it was called Dapi ring, Dapi meaning dapivirine, because they wanted something that also resonated with what the medication rather that was in the ring was, and then something like that. So unfortunately I left before we could find out
Yeah.
more about whether they finally took the the recommendation that we provided. But the ring, if I remember correctly, was named as one of the suggestions that we provided. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That sounds interesting. So, I mean, before you answer that question, I spoke about many other things that you do, and I did not mention that you also, a partner, and a mother, So how do you, get time to be part of all these things, doing PhD, being a lecturer at Wits, being a researcher at another institute, and then parenting and being a wife and a friend, I'm sure. How do
Yeah.
you do all of these things?
I honestly don't find time to do anything. Like I don't make time to like, for example, I don't say now it's time to be a mom. Now it's time to be like a wife. Now it's time to like I really don't do that because I've got 24 hours like anybody else. So if I had to like allocate time, I would run out of time because there is, like you mentioned, like so many things that I have to do in a single day. So I just follow a rhythm, man. I do. If I'm where I am at the specific point in time, I really try to do my utmost best in that role, and move to the next one. So I definitely I don't make time for anything. Like I'm sitting with you right now, at my Wits office, where I do both my research work for the perinatal HIV research unit, but if there's an email coming in at the same time, honestly, that requires me to revise a section of my PhD immediately, it's something that I attend to immediately. Another thing that helps me in terms of specifically with my work is I have a long to-do list. So I have like a list or a checklist of things that I do each and every day. And that basically helps me to prioritize what's important in terms of my work. And then just going back home, like I said, when I'm home, I really try to, I guess, apply my mind there,
Yeah.
and be a mom. I do have a lot of support at home, so it's not like it's a lot of effort for me to do that. And yeah, I guess I also, in terms of my partner, he also, I guess, understands the type of person that I am. So like, for example, I hate cooking. Yeah, so I think it's also just the person that I have as a partner. He also understands how I am. I'm super against having like specific roles assigned to women. Like I'm supposed to get there and cook and get there and do laundry. So he understands the type of person that I am, and that's very helpful in terms of, I guess, my roles when I get home. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I was about to ask because when you started responding, you're like, "Hey, you just go with the flow." I was like, "Yo, a flow with so many things," but then you ended up, okay, I have a list. So, people
Yeah.
about productivity and everyone being so busy. You know, yeah, I was very interested in your response of how you balance all of these things, and to your response about having a supportive partner. I think, yeah, that's probably one thing that's very important, that
Yeah. But
most of
supportive
us
is also
neglect.
subjective.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I mean, it's something
Supportive.
that many people neglect, right? Because given our history and the current crop of men, particularly in our country, and maybe, I mean,
Yeah.
probably globally, that historically, woman, like you said, was someone who cooks and takes care of the children, and so for you to find yourself pursuing so many things that you're pursuing academically and professionally, you needed that supportive man who has a different way of thinking compared to what's more, so to call it, normal, in our country. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
big ups to Mr. G. And I think that's a very important thing, of, like you said, the roles. Things have changed now. You also bringing money home, and you also have your own career, aspirations. So we can't be boxed, into the old ways of living. But I think that's a topic maybe for another day. Thank you for coming through, man, and for giving us time. I can't emphasize it. I really appreciate it, and I know that what you do and things that you said now are gonna touch a lot of people's, minds and hearts, and continue to. What does Gandhi say? Continue to be the change you want to see.
Amen.
Continue to be a change maker. And a real influencer. I hope I don't get into trouble for saying
Influencer.
with the influencers.
Influencer. A content creator.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, Katlego. You and I will chat soon.
Sure. Thank you. Bye for
Cheers.
now.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been a Smarty School production. Catch you on the next episode. Stay smart and keep well. If you enjoyed this episode of Changemakers, please subscribe if you have not already. Help us spread the word by rating and commenting on the podcast. We like hearing from you, as this will help us create better content and reach more people. Share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues whom you think will benefit or like this sort of content. If you have questions for me or my guest, or topics that you would like us to discuss next time, email me at podcasts@smarteschool.co.za.